Ladies and gentlemen, our esteemed viewers, listeners, subscribers, and followers of Ascent Radio, and welcome to another interesting and exciting edition of Let's Talk with Ascent Litigation. And I remain your host, your radio friend, your radio commentator, your radio lawyer, Barrister David Njoko Ono. And as usual on Ascent Litigation, what we do, we talk about topical issues, we dissect the law and try to look at what the law says in respect to happenings around us, whether they are political, social, entertainment, sports, as long as they have connotation of the law. We dissect them and ensure that you, our wonderful listener, you are part of the community, growing community of legal enthusiasts that are legal literate. Because we want to create a society where we have less of litigious issues and more of cordial relationship amongst citizens and more citizens in the society. And that is the essence of this program, where we start to sensitize the public about what the law says. And today will be no different, as we're going to be discussing a very important topic for today. It was the man Cathy Trop. Cathy Trop wrote the book, Why Do We Fall in Love? The Psychology of Choosing a Partner. Why do we fall in love and the psychology of choosing a partner? That was a book, a bestseller book written by Cathy Trop. You can go on Amazon and get it. But Cathy Trop did not come back to give us the second edition of that book. Why do people fall out of love? Because Cathy Trop, in one of the chapters, said one of the ultimate consequences of falling in love is ending up having a life partner and being married to that person. That is one of the consequences of falling in love. Well, he didn't come back to tell us why people fall out of love, and then one of the consequences of falling out of love is now filing for a separation or a divorce with that partner who initially you fell in love with. And so I'll be acting as a Cathy Trop here and tell you the second edition of that very book, Why Do People Fall Out of Love? And that informs our topic for today. Legally acceptable reasons for divorce in Nigeria. We're talking about divorce. Why do people haven't shared those very marital vows? Those solemn matrimonial vows in the altar or in the churches or at the marriage registry. And then years down the line, they decide to cut ties and say we are no longer in love. We are falling out of love. People have given different reasons. As a practicing lawyer, I've heard several reasons from clients about why they want a divorce from their spouse. Some will tell you that, I have now attained a social status within the society for which my spouse is no longer befitting to join me in that status because possibly I'm now richer than I was before. Someone will tell me that I need someone that is modernized, someone that doesn't have to tie wrappers everywhere, someone that will befit the type of person I am today. And that woman I married or that man I married 3 years ago is no longer befitting of my status. Some will tell you that, right now, I feel I'm too dark, so I need a partner that is fair so that my children will have the blend of being fair rather than having all dark children. So, several reasons I have heard in my course of practice as a lawyer on why people want divorce. But all these reasons are not the reasons encapsulated under our law why people should divorce. And that is why we want to educate the public on legally acceptable reasons for divorce in Nigeria. What are those things, circumstances that will warrant the partner to say, I will want to divorce my spouse, and the law will sanction it or the law will approve of it? Now, let's get into it right away. The number one ground and only ground in Nigeria where a marriage can be dissolved is that the marriage has broken down irretrievably. That is to say, there cannot be any repair to that relationship called marriage. That is to say, the parties have fallen out of love, just as the way they fell in love initially. They are falling out of love. And there is nothing, no Jupiter on earth that can bring them back and glue them back in the institution called marriage. Now, having understood the sole and primary reasons why any marriage in Nigeria can be separated, or divorce can be pronounced on any marriage in Nigeria, we are now going to look at the reasons, that is the grounds upon which the court will look at the marriage and say the marriage has broken down irretrievably, or the marriage is now beyond repairs, that nobody can fix this marriage anymore, and it is best that we allow parties to go their separate ways. There are about 8 reasons, and we'll take them one by one. Number 1 of that reason is the persistent refusal to consummate the marriage. Where one of the partners has decided that I will not consummate this marriage. By consummation of marriage, we mean having that conjugal relationship as husband and wife for the purpose of recreation or for pleasure. In marriage, one of the rights in marriage is the right of consortium, which is the benefits of that union. And one of it is sex. So, where either of the parties have refused to consummate the marriage by consenting to sex to the other partner, then that other partner that has been denied sex can approach the court and say this marriage has broken down irretrievably. But I will have to explain here. It is not that your wife or your husband have refused sex within 2 months or 3 months, and then you will say you want to bring the marriage to an end. There are conditions under this ground for which you can bring an application for divorce. Number 1 is that since after the marriage, either of the parties have not consummated the marriage, that is, they have not had sex after the marriage. It is not a defense that before the marriage the partners were having sex, but after the marriage they stopped having sex. So the duration for consummation starts immediately after the marriage. Number 2, where the marriage, after the marriage there was sex, but subsequently sex was denied, the petitioner or none of the parties can come under this ground of lack of consummation of marriage to now ask for a divorce, because the marriage has already been consummated. So sex for just once after the marriage amounts to consummation of marriage, and then you cannot come under this ground for a divorce. Number 2 is the act of adultery, which the other partner finds intolerable to live with. Now, adultery is a crime in the northern part of Nigeria, but not a crime in southern part of Nigeria. However, in both religions, chief religion in Nigeria, the Islamic and Christian religion, finds adultery as a sin, a grievous sin for that matter. And as such, where a partner has been found to have committed adultery, if the other partner, that is the other spouse, finds that act of adultery intolerable to live with or incompatible to live with, then he can file for a divorce and separation of that marriage. Now, this ground of filing for divorce is subjective. That is to say, if you find your wife or your husband to have committed adultery, and then the family came together and then pleaded with you, and you said, I have forgiven him or I have forgiven her, and it continues, and you said, it's because of God I forgive you, that amounts to condoning the act of adultery by that spouse. And as such, you that condones that act, you can no longer come to the court and tell the court that he committed adultery 2 years ago. Though I forgave him, but now I no longer forgive him. I want to file for a divorce. The court will tell you no, because you have condoned that act. But if as at 2 years ago or a month ago, he committed the adultery, and you said no, I cannot live with an adulterous husband, or I cannot live with an adulterous wife, and you file your petition at that very moment, then the court can listen to you, and if it finds a credible evidence to show that adultery was committed, then the court will dissolve and end that marriage. It is equally worthy to note that you must not have caught your spouse red-handed in the act of adultery. Adultery can be inferred from circumstantial evidence. This is what we mean. A situation where a husband comes back or a wife comes back from work, and the spouse is inside with another, the opposite sex, and you knock at the door severally for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and the door was not open. Finally, the door was open, and you saw your spouse seated on the couch or on the bed with her wrapper loosely tied to her body, or with his shirt not well buttoned, or with his trousers loosed and his belt not on it. It can be inferred that there was an incident of adultery within that period when you were away and when you were knocking persistently and there was no opening of the door. So adultery, you must not be caught in the act of adultery for you as a spouse to prove that there was adultery for which you now bring in an application for a divorce. Thirdly, that the other partner has acted irresponsibly, that you find such irresponsible behavior intolerable and incompatible to live with. Now, this is what we mean. That your spouse acts in an irresponsible manner, such that you yourself, you cannot tolerate such behavior, and you find it that you cannot live with such a person. Now, this ground, unlike the grounds for adultery, is objective and not subjective. That means it must be a reason, a behavior where the ordinary person will look at it and agree with you that I cannot live with this very kind of person. For example, persistent drunkenness. Your spouse drinks so much that he or she, you've always been called and said, madam, go to so joint. Your husband is in the gutter. He has drunk to stupor. You were called today, go and pick him up in the gutter. Tomorrow you were called, go and pick him up by the roadside. A day after tomorrow you were called, go and pick him up in the market. So the act of persistent drunkenness, you find it to be an unreasonable behavior, that you are no longer, that unreasonable behavior, you are no longer compatible to live with it. Then you can file for a divorce and the court will grant you the divorce. Or your spouse has been convicted of rape or bestialism. Then rape is an offense which I don't think anybody will want to live with such character. Or the act of bestialism, sleeping with animals. I don't think anyone will want to live with such a character. If you find your spouse to be indulging in any of these activities, then that irrational and irresponsible behavior is incompatible with your status of life, for which you no longer find any enjoyment in living with such character, then you can apply for a divorce and the court will grant you the divorce under this ground. Fourthly, desertion. That is to say that your partner has deserted you for a period of 1 year without any form of communication and with the intent to stop cohabitation. Your husband decides or your wife decides to travel out of the country, and before traveling out, he or she told you that I'm no longer interested in this marriage. Don't call me. Let's no longer have ties. We don't have anything in common. This marriage, for me, this marriage is over. And he or she traveled out of the country. And you waited for him 1 month, 2 months, 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, 11, 12 months. At a stretch, he or she didn't show up. 12 months after. That amounts to a grant for you to file for a divorce and end that marriage. And the court will grant you because the other party no longer wants cohabitation. And he cannot come tomorrow to say, no, I did not mean it then. I only travel for greener pastures. I did not mean it when I said I won't want to cohabit with her anymore. But now I am back and I want my marriage back. As long as he has left you for a period of 1 year with the intent not to continue cohabitation, then you can apply for divorce, and with or without his consent, the court will grant you the divorce. Number 2 is living apart for a period of 2 years with the consent of the other party that he or she wants divorce. Now, this is different from the initial one where we said desertion for the period of 1 year. Desertion and living apart are two different things. Living apart simply means not wanting cohabitation. You may be communicating, but that's rights of consortium, which we said earlier, which is one of the rights enjoyable by virtue of matrimony. You no longer enjoy that companionship with your husband or with your wife for a continuous period of 2 years. And then the other party who has deserted you has considered that I have left you for the period of 2 years and I don't want this marriage anymore. If you fight for a divorce at that moment, then the court will dissolve the marriage because it was with the consent of the other party who has deserted you for the period, or who has left you for a period of 2 years, or cut communications with you for a period of 2 years or more. In this instance, you may be living in the same house. You understand? You may be living in the same compound, but he has refused to talk to you. He may decide that you live at the first floor while he lives on the second floor. So any form of separation amounts to living apart. And if that living apart is continuous for a period of 2 years, and with the consent of the other party that has left you, you can file for a divorce and the court will grant you that divorce. Sixthly, the sixth point is living apart for a continuous period of 3 years, with or without the consent of the other party who has left you for a divorce or consenting to the divorce. Now, this is different from the last two we mentioned, where the other party has left you for a continuous period of 3 years. He decided to travel to Lagos while you are living in Port Harcourt, and he has lived there for a continuous period of 3 years, and you're not enjoying the right of consortium, which ordinarily comes with the act of marriage. You can file for a divorce at that moment, but it must not be the case that within that period of 3 years he left you, or you probably living apart. He has been sending money to you for your upkeep. He has been sending money to you for the upkeep of the children. He has been sending money for house rent and all that. That does not, or those acts amount to care and compassion. And for that reason, the courts will assume or presume that there is still care and communication between the parties. But where he lives for a period of 3 years and he did not, even though he communicated with you, he did not show any care with respect to sending money for upkeep or for the children's upkeep or for rent or for feeding, then with or without his consent, the court will grant the application for divorce and will end the marriage, because the court will presume that the marriage has broken down irretrievably, because those who fell in love has fallen out of love. The seventh reason is failure to comply with a degree of conjugal restitution by the court for a period of 1 year after such decree has been made. Now, one of the rights of parties in marriage is to approach the court when one of the parties, either of the parties, has refused to grant sex to the other party in the course of the marriage. That is to say, even if when you got married, you consummated the marriage, and down the line, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, your partner has refused to grant you sex in the marriage, and you approach the court, telling the court that I have no issues with my spouse, but my spouse has just persistently refused to grant me sex in this marriage. We still love ourselves, but God, please order her or order him to grant me this conjugal right of sex in the marriage. And the court has found merit in your application and has granted that order, directing the other spouse to grant conjugal rights by having sex with the partner. And that other partner to whom the decree has been made upon refuses to comply with that decree for a period of 1 year, continuous period of 1 year, then the other party can approach the court and say, this party who you have given order to grant conjugal rights to me has refused to do that or comply with the order for a period of 1 year, and as such, the marriage has broken down irretrievably, and parties who fell in love has fallen out of love, and as such should go their separate ways. The eighth and last reason upon which divorce can be granted in Nigeria is the presumption of death of a partner who has not been seen or who has been absent from the other partner for a continuous period of 7 years, and you don't know his whereabouts or her whereabouts. Then it is presumed that that partner is dead, and as such, you can apply to court to end the marriage so that you can now remarry some other person. So these are the 8 grounds, the only grounds in Nigeria upon which divorce can take place. And it's not because your wife or your husband is no longer beautiful or handsome, or you have acquired a new status in life for which that your husband or that your wife no longer befits that your status, that you will apply for divorce. In all this, note that in southern Nigeria, it amounts to a crime of bigamy to marry another wife or another husband when you have an existing marriage ongoing. At this junction, we call it a close for today's episode of Let's Talk with Asset Litigation. I believe it has been an interesting and impactful edition. So do well to leave us a comment on the comment section of whatsoever streaming platform you are watching or listening to us. And if there are questions, leave the questions on that comment section and we'll reply you immediately. Do well to go on to YouTube, click and type Law Ascent on YouTube. You will see our channel there. Subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell so as to get notified whenever we upload our daily law tips. If you do well to find this video interesting and educative, give it a like and a thumbs up. And also do well to join us next week on another episode of Let's Talk with Ascent Litigation. And do well to join every other Ascent Litigation shows, daily shows from Mondays till Fridays, every day at 2 p.m. Until we come again your way next week, remain blessed and keep the hope alive for a better Nigeria. I remain your host, Barrister David Njoko Ono, your radio friend and your radio lawyer. Thank you and God bless you.